Good old boys. Bog beef. Oliver Lee Bateman filled in for Merrick. He got picked up with another Dewey, so we had to call in the big guns.
Ooh, hate to see him gone. Hate to see it, Bog. Merrick was actually how I got to know you, so you always hate it when he's not there. But we'll do the job. We'll do the work.
He's got a hell of an attorney. They'll dry him out a couple days in the can. He'll probably do some good. Talking about an article you wrote for American Greatness called "Lifting Weights and Going on Dates." These are two spicy things.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really controversial topic, and basically my thesis is if you lift weights and get stronger, you'll feel better about yourself, and you'll like not just going out on dates, but going out to see people. That's a real hard thing to say, and it's a hard thing to say to a left audience, believe it or not. So that's why it's in American Greatness, of all things.
And you start out saying the simplest advice is often the best. I have to deal with this bullshit all the time because podcast here, the basic theme is this patronage thing. People are like, wait a minute, well, you're just stating like the basic, you're just sort of stating basic truths like it's something to say. I'm like, I need to. I lose the plot if I don't.
Yeah, I mean, common sense is pretty fucking uncommon these days. Conventional wisdom's pretty damn unconventional these days. But seriously, it is, I mean, people want to leap to this next thing before they've even gotten their feet on the ground floor. It's an example of that.
There's a lot of pathologies. We're in the wild, wild west of pathology. There's new crazy things, you might think you're an animal or something tomorrow.
Yeah.
They all sort of start out where your body is either like a rental car or you're not really, this meat thing that you're hooked up to. It's you don't really understand that it's yours. You get lost there.
I mean, the culture around us doesn't really give kids the same opportunities to explore that way. And sometimes, you learn about your body in the context of how other people react to it, So if you're wrestling or something and you happen to take down the other kid, then maybe, you understand, I was able to do that. I'm strong. I understand that. And that's reflected back at you, and you feel that way. Or, some people in the South, I was one of them, like to play mercy, and you flip the other person's hands around, and you really, you squeeze them with your fingers and stuff, and you get them to say mercy. And then you realize, I'm a fairly tough guy in that sense. You like, just as a kid, you just have these thoughts. But I think today, And I mean, this current lockdown, it differs from different parts of the country, but this current lockdown, man, this is rough in the sense that it's just going to exacerbate trends to be inside and to be very much focused on screens of various sizes and be immobilized, often, in uncomfortable positions. I take it seriously, getting up, moving around, having stuff near my desk to work out, because I work from home, all that sort of stuff. But like these people, it's unfortunate. They may never have had the experience of getting to use their bodies. And I in the article, I even say, there's folks who have disabilities and things like that, and they can still do the most that they can do. Everybody can do the most that they can do to feel a little bit better. But instead, they seem to wallow. Right, and the screens just kind of worsen that process. You got Bug. Like if you just look at a screen all day, especially if you're a male or born male or whatever they say, like AMAB or something, like assigned male at birth or something like that. That's one I learned recently. But if you know the phenomenon of edging, where you just kind of like rub yourself like with the spine of a book or your hand, you don't really do anything. But all kinds of weird thoughts can enter your mind during a 24-hour session of this. And you become almost disembodied too, right? Because the stuff downstairs isn't working correct. I mean, it's kind of half working, right? That's the whole point of it. It's kind of half working. And then God only knows what slips on the screen, right? Maybe a puppy dog, maybe a slice of meat, like a nice looking steak, and pretty soon you're headed down the wrong. Well, back in the day, they would have said you're headed down the wrong path. You're getting pretty close to what happened back in the old Massachusetts colony when Thomas Granger had relations with cows and sheep and so forth and so on. That they called it devilish milking. And they had to, kill him and then kill the animals, as it says in the Old Testament. That's something people should read. That's a good court transcript. The account of the execution of the account of the execution of Thomas Granger in Colonial Massachusetts. But I mean, he didn't have that benefit, right? Like he probably just was, dealing with a gendered imbalance there in the colony and couldn't get a wife. You had to be a man of means there. You had to be somebody. You had to have a specific term for it. You have to have like a good competency or something like that, or a good competence meaning like land, your house built, a real occupation of some kind. Puritans in the 1600s married later in life, so like late 20s. So, somebody like a farmhand like Thomas Granger would find himself maybe SOL, and maybe the ass of the ass or the back of the cow starts looking more inviting. As such. But anyway, once upon a time, those things were considered pathologies or problematic or even evil, right? Like those were terms that were used for them. Today, they're all good, actually. No, they're all good, actually. In fact, they're one Jacobin take away from hitting the mainstream again. Or the extremely online version of the mainstream. I don't think this stuff will ever quite hit the mainstream, but getting back to the bigger point, I mean, and it's interesting to me, all kinds of weird thoughts can creep into your head when you're staring at the screen. You become disembodied, and you really lose that relationship with your body, and eventually you lose that relationship with people. Everything just becomes part of some master plan inside that mastermind, which is just filled with shit, really. There's a benefit to using your body out in the world, having a trained body, doing the most that you can with your body in the time that you have. I mean, the body's the temple and the tomb, so why do you want it to be more temple than tomb, at least towards the bitter end. And it's become actually, there's been a lot of these hot takes, right, that appear. More of them have appeared in the past year. For a while in like 2019, 2018, there were hot takes appearing about something called the swole left, which is just this fellow named Pancho Martinez or something like that. He wasn't really strong, but he did lift weights, and somehow they began writing stories about him because he was lifting weights to fight the fash or something. I think his name isn't Pancho anymore, and maybe listeners know more about him than I. The swole left. I think he's actually, or they actually are trans, and I don't want to misgender them or anything. And he's like they are painting their nails and stuff like that. I think the swole left, hot take for that individual. I could be wrong on the details. I really haven't. I've never covered it, despite editors asking me to write about. I'm not going to write about somebody who. I'm only going to write about people who can lift more than me or who are impressive female lifters. I'm not writing about anything else in that regard. I'm sorry. That's not a trend that's interesting to me in that sense. But anyway, that hot take was, it appeared in a couple magazines in 2018 or 19. But nowadays, it's really been pushed out of the water. And the sea is just full of these, like, fitness is fash. Anyone who exercises is fash, lifting a weight is fash, on and on and on. And that to me, I mean, we see pushback from some quarters on Twitter, like at Marxist Soccer and so forth. Some of these guys lift and proudly lift, but they would just be considered fash anyway, right, under this new. And so it's become very unpopular to talk about this, but I think you've seen it. I mean, particularly among some of the accounts of the younger people who are trying to date, who might listen to this show or other shows or my show, What's Left. They might be trying to date, and they might actually enjoy getting in shape and going out on dates. They might actually like doing that. I can't speak for them, but it seems like there's a desire among some of them to kind of rebel against the norms of staring at a screen or logging on to DeviantArt for 16 hours straight while wearing an overnight diaper. There seems to be a desire among the kids to just kind of do some of the things that kids used to do, like going out and like saying like, oh yeah, I worked out for 6 months, I'm looking better, whatever that means, right? Not even vanity. I'm not an aesthetics person, but like just I don't feel like such a. That's where I distinguish myself from the BAP. That guy's very interested in aesthetics, and that's his thing. It is not for me. It's just functional strength and ability. But it still feels good to be able to go out and like haul big bags of garbage or shovel out a compactor by yourself.
Imagine
Dig a
one of
hole.
those return to the med accounts, those aesthetics accounts. That's return to the South PA.
Yeah. You go down. Mine that coal by hand. Pre-long walls in the mines. Just get down in there with a pickaxe, and pull that shit out. You're squatting down 3 feet from the ceiling, basically. But nobody would want to do that as actual work. All the people that did that hated that and died young. But like they could do it, right?
Had to.
And I think just that there's something about that functional aspect of life, and that's totally lost, and it's getting increasingly disturbing when you see that, at least among like the elite tastemakers, not only is it lost, but they don't want it to come back. They don't want it to like recrudesce or reappear. They need it to stay dormant. In fact, they need to make, and this goes back to the article we talked about last time, they need to make a big show of how powerful they are in their weakness. How many different vulnerabilities, basically like, a man with instead of being a man that carries, speaks softly and carries a big stick, he tweets loudly and carries a rape whistle, right? It's just like, what the hell are you doing? I hate to say it, like you just want to take somebody and shake them in that sense and just say, this isn't going to end well for you. And this not in the sense that like something bad is going to happen to you from other people. You're just going to be real unhappy when you're 45. You're going to feel like a sack of shit. Why would you want to feel like that? Why would you not want to have the confidence to go out and talk to somebody or do something?
You could be on your third bypass too, by the way.
You could. Get a couple stents in there. That's a good way to go out. You'd be at risk for the COVID, though. You would not want to be going out too much then. Stay
you cover
in.
A lot of these wrestlers who pass on. How many of them have serious heart trouble before 45?
It's a lot of folks are from the 80s generation when steroid use was really heavy and it was combined with cocaine or crack, depending on who the athlete was. That was bad. Because the types of steroids that were being used in the 80s were pretty cheap. A lot of stuff really used to gain mass, like Dianabol, which causes you to bloat and is really hard on the liver. As well, it's usually a lot of people's first steroid. Or some variation of it, or some mixed down version of it is their first steroid. But you've got that. You've got the diets those guys had living on the road. Like they used to call, even in the 80s, because McMahon didn't often front any money for food expenses or hotels. They'd sleep like 5 to a room and do what was called the bologna blowout, where they'd get 6 pounds of bologna and 6 pounds of American cheese and eat that with a couple bags of white bread. And if they needed extra calories, they'd put olive oil or mayonnaise or butter on the bread. Or, vegetable oil, and that would put pounds on you. A lot of them would sleep in their cars, too, and do the same thing. So do a bologna blowout in your car. Pop some Dianabol, try to talk your way into getting into a gym for free. This is kind of the life of the guys in the late 70s, early 80s who were trying to get big for the ring. And then at night, light up a few rocks. Maybe go and maybe if you're lucky, there's a little bit of residue, and you can glue that back together and try to pass it off as a rock and sell it the next day. It's a pretty for some of the guys, it was a pretty rough life, and so any one of those things might be safe on its own. Like you might be able to do cocaine safely for 10 years, 20 years. You might be able to use steroids under a physician's supervision for 20 years, 40 years. Look at Stallone. Sylvester Stallone, looking good. He's purple, but otherwise. Completely in the pink, or actually in the purple of health. I was about to say the pink of health, but no, he's in the purple of health. But otherwise, fit, healthy. Arnold, for example, after, got out of shape while governor, because you can't be juicing while governor, but is back in good shape now in his age 70 or whatever he is. But for these old wrestlers, the consequences of 325, 330 days on the road, 3 matches a day, 2 matches a day, low grade steroids, terrible diet, and then partying, you're going to have a lot of fatalities. And so it doesn't come as a surprise that a lot of the guys that became that famous generation of dead wrestlers that my Ringer editor, David Shoemaker, kind of came to prominence at Deadspin writing about dead wrestlers. Like the feature was Dead Wrestler of the Week, and he'd write about one of these guys who died. And it was all the 80s cast of characters, Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, all of these sorts of folks. And so I've taken on that legacy. Now, I've been fortunate to get some of the guys dying in their late 70s who were from the prior generation that just kind of were like rough and tumble on the road, like rednecks or carnival performers, these types of guys. And then just other folks who might have just been fat, like King Kong Bundy or Kamala. But in terms of the steroid cases or people that wore themselves down with steroids, I mean, I covered the death of Dynamite Kid, Tom Billington, who was half of the British Bulldogs. Just did Animal of the Road Warriors. He didn't party quite like his partner Hawk, who was a real wreck to the point where there were WWE storylines in the late 90s about what a wreck Hawk was. But they had, these tickers, like I said, my friend Chris Bell, the filmmaker, Bigger, Stronger, Faster, the documentary, will say over and over again, steroids are healthy under a doctor's care. Steroids are healthy if you're having blood work done. Healthy is, put it in quotes, but like, what's going on. You're able to manage. But if you are just like uncontrolled, like on the road with a brown bag full of pills, not even injecting yourself, not even having blood work done, eating like a hog, weighing 300 pounds but only being 6 feet tall, breathing like a freaking elephant or some kind of pack horse, as you walk around the ring, you're just not going to make it. I mean, I thought the Ultimate Warrior was going to die in the ring in the 90s, just because he would be gassed after his run to the ring. I mean, he wasn't cut out to go 10 minutes. If you had to go 5 minutes with him, he was going to be blown up. But he had a great body on him. He was a type of, guy that, a friend of mine was like, his dad would always walk into the room while he was watching wrestling, and then the Ultimate Warrior would be on, and he'd be wrestling someone else that, actually worked out, maybe like Dino Bravo or somebody like that. And, the father would see the Ultimate Warrior and go, "Oh, I bet he pumps iron." Well, no shit, he pumps iron, like that. So that was my friend Ryan's dad's remark about pumping iron. Every time he'd see Hulk Hogan or the Ultimate Warrior, Rick Rude, he would say, "Oh, looks like they pump iron. They must go to the gym a lot." And with the exception of Hogan, Rick Rude is dead, heart attack. Ultimate Warrior is dead, heart attack. Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, is dead, heart attack. Macho Man died of a heart attack before crashing his car. Again, any number of medical interventions probably could have helped stop this. Stopping steroids 10 years before they did, going on blood pressure medication, having regular blood work done. It's just not a recipe for great health, but it was a recipe in the 80s for great bodies. I mean, like I said, your dad could walk in the room and be like, "Man, look at the body on those Road Warriors. Wow. How much do you think they bench? 300 pounds? 800? The people just, so I think if people don't know anything about the bench press, they'll just randomly quote a number, 900 pounds. Do you think he can lift 1,000 pounds? Well, I mean, it depends on the lift, right? Don't know. But go ahead.
Well, this guy's gimmick is he's fucking huge and juiced out, like Hercules or whatever.
Yeah, that was Hercules' gimmick, and he wore a chain.
And then you had like 20 guys show up, and it's like, oh, his gimmick is this guy is fucking absurdly huge and juiced out.
Yeah.
And then they said that it just turned into a stock character they just called the Monster.
Yeah. I mean, you have to keep getting bigger and bigger ones, too. So, like, the Warlord was bigger than Hercules, but the Warlord was a lot stiffer than Hercules. So each level up you went on them. Finally, there was a guy in the AWA, which was, like a dying rival of the WWF in the late 80s, named Jeep Swenson. Some of you might remember him as Bane in the third or fourth of the Batman movies, the one with Schwarzenegger, Batman and Robin, where Schwarzenegger is Mr. Freeze. Jeep Swenson plays Bane, but doesn't use any CGI. He's just a 450-pound juice freak who also dies, I think, of a heart attack not long after that movie. But yeah, Bane is in that movie, played by the ultimate muscle monster of that era, Jeep Swenson, a man so big he couldn't even make it into the WWE. He was just too damn big. But he was huge. And he lives on, and I don't, some of your listeners may be interested in this, but there are actually websites that sell vintage wrestling videos of like hairy-chested muscle men with the Diana Ball builds. They have like, good muscle, but they also have like fat double chins and shit from the bloating. That is directed to a 100%, gay, male, bear-loving audience. And there is a good market for it. And there is a rip-roaring trade in vintage DVDs of these muscle bears and these muscle monsters. A friend of mine linked me to a site that must have laid out 1,000 matches of like these things you can't find anywhere else on YouTube. And I was like, holy shit. That's the love. I mean, those guys are better at chronicling the male body than anybody. They're the historians of all that. I look at Mirror, I don't have any clue what's going on, but they know. They know intimately, and that is a public service, I would say. So if they keep alive like some Hercules Hernandez versus Jeep Swenson match from 1988, just because it's 3 minutes of muscle bumping, I mean, they are doing the sport of wrestling a great service, and I thank them for it.
Trump appointed Tom Fitton to his judicial watch.
Oh yeah, you pointed out like the Chad of the Judicial Watch. Chad has now gone mainstream. I mean, what's his deal besides doing FOIA requests? Like, what's his story? I don't know much about the guy.
I think he just wears mediums and just sort of a and I don't know if there's a lot of photos that look like he's got the guns out and he's standing there looking disapprovingly at lib judges.
That's a good shtick. I on social media, if you are like, and in the media, if you are like a halfway in shape person, you become like a Hulk in that world. I heard somebody like way back when people were describing the Chapos to me, and they were like, well, there's the jacked one, Felix Biederman. And I was like, what? So I looked up who this was. And that name had appeared on a few Deadspin articles, but I was like, it's not like a Hulk. It's not like a muscle man. I mean, it's just some guy. But yeah, that was when I was like, standards are a little different here. This is an interesting industry.
That edging thing. We
yeah, it's a big.
Not one of the highlights of the show, but I was, we have a lot of fans, and I was talking to one of them that was like one of these NoFap guys. And
wow, that's a bold stance.
I'm not against it, but we were talking about. So I had laid out some advice on our episode on how to not become like what's that guy's name? Remember that guy? He posted horrible. He was responsible for LibGen going down.
LibGen, the book encyclopedia, like the book server, LibGen.
Yeah.
It's still around. libgen.rus.ec or something. lib.gen.rus.ec. I still use it. It's great.
Yeah.
The first iteration went down, but it's back.
Well, anyways, one of these guys that's just like these horrible soy guys, and and somewhere along there, I offered the advice. I said, well, our show, we do cater to chronic masturbators, among others.
Yeah, of course. It's a coin of the realm.
And we said, all you got to do is just get it done in 5-10 minutes. You
Yes.
stay out of all this trouble.
Yes.
There's no difference. You're not going to walk away being like, I was cheated out of this. You know what I mean? You'll be fine. Just take care of that. Okay, so going back, and we're talking about like being aware that you are in your body. I did a podcast last night with Curtis Yarvin. That was a big moment for us. I have been going to bed at 8:30 p.m. lately. I don't know why. It just happened.
That's a good move.
I've been feeling great doing it. But then last night, you get tied up. This is a big episode. Next thing I know, I'm sitting in a chair for 3.5 hours. It gets done at like it's midnight. I've got to finish up. I get up, right? And so me and my body we're not like, we have to like, we don't know who we are. I look down at my foot. I'm missing a toenail. It's like hanging off by a thread. There's blood all over it. And like, you're not aware of that. And one of the things when you work out, that there's a paradox of working out. Is that you're especially when you first get going, you have that muscle soreness all the time.
Oh yeah, it's real bad. It sucks.
So the biggest, strongest guys you'll see will be like, they're hanging on with both hands trying to get up the stairs, which is it's a funny thing. But that constant soreness all the time, it made me think of so there's if you ever heard of people having perfect pitch? Or if you play a music pitch, they just know what note that is.
Yeah. They used to those people used to be able to freak the phone system in the 50s and 60s and 70s and actually take control of the line and be able to make a long distance call that way. Eventually, Steve Jobs and other people invented machines that would replicate that. But yeah, it's a story your listeners should look up. Phone freaking, PHREAKING, using perfect pitch. But yeah, perfect pitch. Go
Captain
ahead.
Crunch. Captain Crunch cereal included a toy whistle at one point.
Yes.
For a short promotion, and this toy whistle,
yes,
if you blew in it, generated the exact tone that Ma Bell wanted to.
That's right.
If it heard this tone, you could make a free long distance phone call.
It's a great deal. Great deal.
Which doesn't sound like much now. That was a big fucking deal back then. Long distance phone calls would cost hundreds of dollars. You would call your aunt in California. It'd be like $300.
It's a hell of a deal. I mean, and it launched the careers of all these freakers. That either the first discovery of that was some autistic man with perfect pitch, pre Captain Crunch whistle. He's like a legend. There's a documentary about him. Total he would have been big online, but total kind of stunted development in other ways. But yeah, the perfect pitch phenomenon. I mean, I find that at this stage in my life, if I ever quit working out, I would probably be sorer than I ever was on any day that I worked out. The engine is such that I need to work out to not hurt getting out of bed. And that's what happens over time. You hurt when you get started and you want to quit, but then after 20 years, you've become dependent on how the deadlift is going to properly stretch out your lats, or how legs are going to feel after you get off the box jump or something. You become dependent on that. That's actually what I was doing before I got on here. I was doing some kip ups and box jumps and stuff like that just to loosen it up so that I can go to sleep tonight when I'm done here. So you get it coming and going. You're sore in the beginning, but if you ever quit, you're going to become sorer than you ever were when you started. But as long as you do it, you're going to feel good. That's another important part of functional strength and functional fitness. The longer you do it, even if you're just 20 minutes a day using exercises to grease the grooves of the muscles, the sort of Pavel approach. Anybody wants any of those books, I'll send them to them. I have every one of these books, thanks to GenLib. Anybody needing that. But anyway, I'm totally dependent on it, but it also lets me get up every day. I don't feel like dog shit. I never have leg, knee, back issues at all. Just maybe slight soreness if I had a really good workout. And I can feel the difference between pain and good soreness after a workout. You get that, you develop that sense. You're your lower back is, if your lower back's real janked after a deadlift session, but your lats aren't, and your glutes aren't, something was wrong with that particular session. But if it's the other way around, lats are really hurting, they're not hurting but sore, and glutes are really janked, but your lower back is stable and firm, then you probably had a pretty good deadlift session. You probably didn't hitch or have anything go bad.
That's you. That's you're not googling stuff. You and your body are talking to each other.
Yeah, yeah. I don't need to. I mean, like at this point, I don't need to Google anything. I know. I'm not trying to break any records or anything, but like I can go down in the basement and like the stuff I'll do just by myself without a spotter or whatever. I know what it is. It's gonna feel good. Like I know I can, bench and pause on my chest 355 3 times. Like people watch my Twitter feed can just see it. And it just feels good. Like I'm not. I could probably do more with if I went on the juice. I could probably do more if I wanted to weigh 300 pounds. But it's just like stuff that I do that really just gives me. It gives me the confidence that I can do anything else that I need to do. Like if I got to go out and work in the yard all weekend, or if you've got to do something physically otherwise in your life, just the knowledge that you can get out there and do it, or like run around with your kid or something like that. Again, the fact that that gets pushed back on or demonized, or it's tied up in some larger philosophy of life that that's just either saying it's fash, or it's, some people say it's like neoliberal. You become the neoliberal subject just doing the work. But if you're just doing it for your own personal education and excellence, if you're doing it for that sense of arete, right, like that Greek notion of excellence, then it's different. It feels good, and I would imagine that, and I hate to say it, but I would imagine that so many posters, if they got a taste of that, would be shaken out of their like post all day funk. I mean, there's more to life than panning for gold on the tweets. There's more to life than a good tweet storm. And this jogs you away from that. Like I look at Twitter, I'll fire off a banger every once in a while or something, or weigh into something, or occasionally, I'll joke with you like twice a month. I'll go in hot on somebody on there, but never. Yeah. It's not a big deal. Amy does the dirty work.
I hit the air raid siren when you do it. Everyone's got it. Yeah, because it's you don't get to see that.
I've picked my target. Like I've picked that. I know that I'm going to win that particular one. I'm not. I don't do carpet bombing. Amy is very good at scorched earth. She's very good at firing them up. But that's her role. I more. It's going to be a very strategic. It's going to be a very strategic bombing, and I'm going to be in and out. Get my likes. Have some people go on there. Throw a few Drag 'em King. Follow ups onto it. That's good. But there's more to life than that. And the sooner you recognize that. Although the scary thing is if you pull back from it and you've just decided, because I worked out with this like really feeble kid. He was like briefly the stepson of my uncle, and I was just to this kid. I was just like, Tony, this is how you do a handstand. And he goes to me. He goes, Oliver, I don't think I'll ever be able to do a handstand. And I was like, no. Everybody can fucking do one if they're not 5,000 pounds. Like anyone can do it. Do it against the wall. Like just train against the wall. You can do it. He's like, no, I don't think I can. And that blew my mind. I was like, so there might be people that will say that with no actual limitations to doing it, and they've just decided to punch out. That's where they're headed next is I don't know, the computer, or maybe like back in the day it would have been like World of Warcraft or a MOBA or something. Maybe for some people it's posting, for the love of the post. But I can't get in for that. That made me so sad.
You know what I see with so there's two different models that you see in politics with this working out stuff. So one of them you see is it generally there'll be some kind of political anything. So this could be like some total screwball or whatever, but they'll offer sort of mild lifting weights advice. You should do this, get you some protein, blah blah blah, and combine it with politics in whatever way possible. And this is someone in recruitment mode, but let's set that aside. But who cares? Okay, there's another mode that feels something different, and it makes me think of a song lyrics of a band that's always been considered extremely cringy, which I love, by the way. I think to me there's always with music, like the way lyrics and music, like if you ever listen to like R&B music, stuff like this, these James Brown, if you behave the way James Brown does on dates, whatever, you would get negative tail, right? He's begging for it all the time and
Yeah,
stuff.
it is strange. I would listen to that or like something like Johnny Ace, like Pledging My Love or something. I'd listen to that,
James
Forever
Brown
My
is Mr.
Darling. I'd listen to that and I'd be like, I never felt that way about anything,
James Brown's Mr. Please, Please, Please.
Yeah, I don't care that much.
It's all nonstop begging, and the baddest country dudes. Every song, they're just crying their eyes out. Blah blah. Blah. You flip side, you find a 78-pound guy, that can't punch his way out of a paper bag. They're listening to fucking death metal. I'm killing everybody. Blah blah. There's a weird reverse to music. But anyways, so taking that Sunday song, it say, "I need you broken, defenseless, and alone." And that's what I get this weird feeling that it's like, you're worth more to me as we do the patronage stuff. So like you're worth more to my project if you're fucked up.
Whew, yeah, I mean, if you realize that, once you realize that, it's pretty interesting thought to say the least.
I can handcuff you to a handrail out front of whatever and get more mileage out of you. Be going the long haul. That's yeah.
It's kind of a disturbing thought when you have it like that, and you realize then how much of everything else is tied up in that type of weakness and like what it allows. Because it's not just people say like, oh, you got to be jailhouse strong so that you can resist authority. It's not that. It's that if you are functionally strong, that strength is reflected in every aspect of your life. Like you're gonna be able to stand up and do what you need to do, and you're gonna have some confidence. If you don't, then you're just going to melt all the time to the point where you're one of those people having Twitter meltdowns about some point. You're one of those people who's literally shaking right now on Twitter all day long, and that's depressing, Bug. That's like a really depressing way to be. I think a terrible mode of existence, but it's perfect if I was truly some kind of like guru or Svengali and I needed a bunch of followers. Those people would be great. They would be like, I mean, they're gonna like rat on each other for me. They'll self-police each other for free. I won't even have to, like, the patronage I need to give them is just a couple likes.
Yeah.
Just a little cream just a little cream dripping out of the pie, so to speak, will be enough to wet their whistles. Come on.
This is, and by the way, all this stuff is relative. You bring up, you brought up a couple of these figures that like dabble in the politics space, and people are like, "Wow, that guy's jacked." Maybe think of a couple of our friends here at the show. Thought and Jeff Van Drew. We got to have him on the show.
Yeah. He's great.
He's great. Merrick showed Thought in a picture of him one time, and she was like, that guy belongs in the circus. Can you tell him to lay off the steroids? That's way too much.
He likes to work out.
But it was a funny reaction. Nothing was meant by it. But there would be different points where guys who were, you're thinking like, if you were judging even on like it's a guy who has a protein shake once a week. Definitely not big guys. And she would say, "Wow, that guy's huge. That's I don't even that's a little weird. Like is he is this part of an act or something?" But that that's one of the things is it doesn't take much, and people see that you're involved a little bit. Going back to the perfect picture thing. So I remember, so my roommates in college. So perfect pitch, by the way, it's exceedingly rare. It's one of these things that's sold like a speed reading and stuff that's just always just out of reach, and it's just speed reading. I think is maybe totally fake, but like from what I understand, there has never been a documented case of like an adult learning perfect pitch without outside of like a couple of different things. And one of the ways you can get it as an adult, it's not really perfect pitch. All the things where you get it as an adult is not really perfect pitch. And by the way, one of the little reasons that especially English speakers don't get it is we don't do pitch in our we don't do that for as inflection. But one of the ways you can get it is to have horrible ringing in your ears, and you can learn the pitch of that. So everyone can learn relative pitch. So if you hear one pitch, you can match it to the other. So I had a roommate in college. He had it. He had the fake perfect pitch. He had this horrible ringing in his ears, but like that, it made me think of the soreness thing. So he got like a superpower out of just being like, there's always something, that soreness. You're always in communication with your body.
Yes.
You have that.
Yes. Yeah, you could sense the slightest, like if there's a tweak in my knee versus just something else, like, yeah, I'll know, or you can always tell, well, like, oh, my wrist is strained versus actually it's just, you know what I mean? Like, immediately, when something's off with any of the systems because you're dependent on those systems. Not dependent maybe, but you use those systems so that you need them to operate a certain way, and if they don't, then you get upset. I want to say, like, you brought up speed reading, man. Like, that is one of those things that I have heard that, just like how they'll say to the Ultimate Warrior, like some dad will come in and be like, oh, does he work out? Some parent that happened to know me or knows me will come in and say, oh, you do all this, or, are you a speed reader? And I'll what the fuck does that mean? I'm not proud of it. I read all the time, but that's because I don't travel that much anymore. So I am surrounded by my stuff, and I use it for work. But like speed reading, it's just essentially like skimming a book for context. People say they can do this, but it's only like a handful of.
Scammed 3 times on this.
Yeah, like it's. You might find a few Rain Man types who can memorize a whole book or the phone book. Those are really useless skills. Like Jerry Lucas, the basketball player, Jerry Lucas, who went to Cincinnati for college, who's a famous player, and then played for the Knicks on those Knicks championship teams, was famous for his memory. So his whole thing, other than being an NBA player, like this tall, gangly white guy, was like an act where he would get on TV and read the phone book, memorize the phone book, and then read the phone book back to people. And that was his thing. And his teammates would be like, he was always memorizing phone books. And I just thought, like, what a useless skill that he had. Like, not even put to the purpose of memorizing basketball plays, although he apparently had like a perfectly memorized shot. Like if they had a 3-point line, he would have scored 30, 40 a game. So he had like a perfect shot for such a tall guy, and it was very reproducible. But I mean, his whole thing was memory. But I mean, that stuff is useless ultimately. I remember what I need to remember, for work, for doing the work. It's totally functional. And speed reading, like anybody that's trying to everybody's pitching you on those books. For a while, I used to write for a couple $100 a pop. I would write the scripts for these executive summaries of books. And one time I wrote the script for Astrophysics in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson. So I wrote a summary of a summary. And I have it if anybody ever wants to read it. It's like 2,000 words summarizing a book that was just a summary with no real argument. And I had to write it out so that somebody could read it, so that some bored CEO could listen to it on a plane. And it was like I was like condensing things that
You're
that guy
it for him.
That guy or his ghostwriter had condensed to like 100 pages. That book is seriously really short, and all of these ways, and I see more and more of these programs coming out. I don't have to do that type of work anymore because I have a day job. But I see more and more of these programs coming out, like learn the great books of the world in 15 minutes for CEOs only. I mean, my God, I don't want CEOs. Like, I'd prefer they know nothing or just their jobs than a 15-minute summary of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck or, Brene Brown's Daring Greatly, which are not complicated books. I summarize both of those. Like, those are not hard books. That'd be like summarizing, like, what are the fucking, those Hunger Games books? Like, you don't need to read a summary of that. Just read it. And you also don't need, like, if you consider, like, putting your speed reading skills to work reading those things, like, what are you even doing? Like, nobody reads like that. In the 17th century, 18th century, somebody like Samuel Johnson's copying little phrases down in a common book. As he'll tell you, he never read a whole freaking book, or if he did, he was very bored. I mean, he takes chunks out of it that he wants. If you follow Amy Therese on Twitter, you'll see she just posts these chunks out of books, and really, that's more valuable than any speed reading that you can do. My books are heavily notated, but I'm not speed reading them. I'm marking them up so that when the next wrestler dies, I've got his autobiography tabbed out so I can write 6,000 words in a night because it's a good rate per word. So it's very functional to me, right? Like, I'm not speed reading Kamala's autobiography. I'm turning that $5 investment or maybe the free copy I was sent into hundreds of times more value, and that. I think that's just that goes to this whole point. Like, I want, you want your body and your mind to be able to function, to be able to do things, not to just be able to, like, whine and cry and edge and sit in front of screens. That shit really makes your mind anxious and unpleasant. You become like a cat on a hot tin roof, or eventually you become almost like greasy inside. Have you ever, like, done that, like, just sat in front of a computer for like 48 hours, especially if you didn't have a good office chair? Like, my God, the whole room's going to stink. You're going to stink. The keyboard's going to be basically crispy from all the stuff that's on it at that point. God knows what that would be. And like, those 2 days, not only are you not getting them back, but you would have been better off going on, like, a blackout bender. I mean, who knows what terrifying depths of the internet you wandered into. And, suddenly you're going to want to be getting eaten by a large frog named Jimmy. That suddenly might become your thing. Now, I've pushed that on your listeners before. That's a work of art. Jimmy the Frog Vor, available on YouTube.
I was looking at the Patreon earlier today, and there's some people that go through the deep cuts. Apparently, I didn't name. I don't know if you heard. We did a podcast. We were contrasting different types of cancellations. We contrasted what it takes to get canceled and the political. I don't know if you know this, but the world of people talk about politics. It is a fucking thimble. There's like 300, 400 people that, like, give a shit about any of this stuff.
Right.
We contrasted it with a guy who plays Game Boy games on stream, like a Game Boy game. You remember the Game Boy? It's like a TI-83 calculator.
Yeah. It's got that green screen, almost green with ink. Terrible.
Yeah. I didn't say his name. This was like, in terms of that world. He's like number 98,000 on YouTube, whatever. This is just total nobody. There's like a different pro for like every single game. Like, the game you couldn't even think of. But he had we were comparing him, I think, to Sam Chris. I guess he grabbed a woman's bottom or something. The Game Boy guy, he had banged out 13 cosplay models by the time his stuff caught up with him. I never named him. The fans were like, "Hey, we heard our Game Boy guy. He's back in the mix." When I did the episode, he had resigned his position, so he was going to work on learn to respect women and things. But he's back on the beat now. You
can't keep a king down like that. I mean, that's a guy with real skill.
We talked about this with someone that everyone listening to this would know way more than you know us. and we were talking. This was a girl, and we said, and others were saying, "Wow, that guy's really horny." He's knocking up, or he's getting into stuff with live. I don't mean just texting and stuff. These are these convention stuff. 13 women. And she was like, "No, no, no. They're guys these days. They're not horny enough. They need to be like this guy. They need to be making moves."
Well, that's something that is often joked about in the cancel culture world. Like, if maybe Sam Chris had lifted a little bit more, he might have been considered fashion in the workplace, but he might not have gotten canceled. They might have actually just kind of like been, oh, that's nice, that type of thing. Like if he'd been a little more jacked, the standards might have been different. No one would ever admit that because people only say what they want to hear. But deep down, people behave the same way as always. Like their reactions deep down,
Yes.
like nobody wants to be weak deep down, right? Like if that's like a last ditch strategy, like do you really want to be the animal whose whole thing is to just fucking roll over every time and you just become real good at that? Playing dead, playing possum. Do you really want to, like, that? You could win that way. It's like if you just win at freaking StarCraft 2 with a Protoss cannon rush nonstop. And like that's just your one thing, like or Tekken leg sweep, right? Like you just do that nonstop. At some point, you're gonna want more from life, and you're not gonna be normal within the confines of that. And I think that at the level where the rubber hits the road, if you strip all this online discourse away from people that's piling on, that they're sort of
Yes.
appropriating from the university classrooms, if you strip that away. And I know because I spent time around this class of people, and I got along fine with them because they started interacting with me differently. Like they began interacting with me like briefly, just it was like a brief escape from them, like from the world. It was like they were back in a real world. They could be real, and they could have these real interactions and these real senses and these real feelings about it. And it manifests itself in the dumbest ways. Like there was a take in the New York Times that I saw coming a mile away in 2018. Like back in 2016, a woman had told me, "Oh, you're such a safe guy. You're just like a jock. I don't feel threatened by you at all." Which would be the opposite, right? But already they had started nerds are toxic as a take. But finally, in the New York Times, an op-ed appears called "Jocks Rule, Nerds Drool." And it is just a woman talking about how jocks are cooler and better than nerds because they're not creeps. And this is like sanctioned in the paper of record, all the news that's fit to print. And that's the whole freaking story there. And so it comes full circle. That's just an attempt to intellectualize the values of the playground that we accept internally no matter what we say.
We have to accept. By the way, as males, we must accept things that women like. Things we have to accept that to some extent, especially in terms of these things. This is, you talk to guys out there, they'll say things like, "This is the whole thing where you're moving from this physical space, you're connected to your body, where you're like, oh, this hurts, I need some water, I'm hungry." And you go to this online space where it's like, I read that 40% of I'm unlikely to find a mate, and there's all this kind of stuff.
Oh, there's some really black-pilled people on that one where they're experts. They might even be well versed in PUA, pickup artistry, but they've also done the game theory and the math to such a point where they're ready to just hang it up.
They're already lost. They run the hour. The thing is, we've talked about this. We've proven these. We have the experience where we have these people that just live in this discourse of men are evil and all that stuff. You had a couple guys from the crew team walk up with their shirt off. This is a real incident. These women were basically ready to pass out.
Remember when those Spanish soldiers wore those revealing uniforms or something, and everybody just flipped their shit, like they had berets on and open shirts, and they were in halfway decent shape.
Oh yeah, it was they were. I don't even want to repeat some of the things they were saying.
It blew my mind. It was like they finally had an outlet for all this repressed honesty that they could only share briefly over this little meme. Just like that woman could only share her honesty in that New York Times op-ed and sort of wrap it around all this intellectualizing. But at the end of the day, some sort of like, Woody Allen looking creature, who in the mirror says to himself like, no, women just want someone who's sensitive. I have the soul of an artist, etc., etc. Like, yeah, but you're male. I mean, you're or AMAB, assigned male at birth, and you know what you are, and you know that you're not going to be comfortable in certain settings, and you know your limits. You do. You deep down, you do. And everybody should want to push up against their limits rather than just accepting them or saying the algorithm and the stack and the odds and like Bayesian theory and everything are working against their, militating against their picking a mate out of the marketplace of sex and gender. I mean, that's sad.
One of the best. If there's any kind of good thing that can come of people talk about all the time with all these sexual stuff, like we sort of went from like the stifled culture where you had the Bayes codes, I guess I heard was the term.
Yeah, the Hays Code in film.
Yeah, and to like you weren't to discuss things, in the old
couples
films.
slept in opposite. Yeah, the Hays Code. Couples slept opposite each other in beds. There would be a curtain drawn between the two. All these strange rules.
We went from that, and so now we're in. What we're in now. But the funny thing is, so through all this, I'm talking to the guys here. When you're with the girl and you're together. You're laughing at all this bullshit. The same way that you were in 1965, the same way you were in 1974, the same way in 2020, because all this is bullshit. Don't feel overwhelmed by all this bullshit that you read, because this is that physical. You got to get in touch with that.
Yeah.
There's a real world outside of these fucking computers.
Get out there and do the work, and do work, as I said on a podcast with Malcolm Shayuna recently. Do work. Don't do the work. Lift something, move something. Just feel good about your body. You don't have to become a Hulk. You don't have to be a He-Man, but just start doing stuff. Get out there. Walk, run, eat better, sleep earlier, go to sleep earlier, quit drinking booze. Whatever you want to do. Just do that, and you won't feel like shit all the time. There's more to life than feeling like shit all the time and coming up with theories to justify it.